daughter last night how they created the European bloc. They created the North American trading bloc. These are economic groups as well as Asian trading companies. They created these conglomerations of countries and said, this is about free trade. This is about economics. Okay, no, their ultimate goal was political. Their ultimate goal is political. And they will use the economic power that they have and the pressure of saying, well, if you get out, your economy is going to collapse. You can't go it on your own. Look, Britain has a far more diversified economy with far more people in it, energy independence, all of these things, far better shape than they ever were before, ever were at any time. Any of these countries could go in on their own. You don't have to live and die by export-import. You can be self-sufficient. Every one of these countries are huge. Probably most of them have a stronger, more diverse economy within themselves than they did as all of Europe 100 years ago. But let's talk about Washington Post's analysis of this. They say, at the moment, the list of countries that might consider to be bolting would be short. France, Denmark, the Netherlands, a handful of others. No, it's much longer than that. They downplay that. They say, but the days in which leaders convened in Brussels to hand over even more sovereignty to the EU may be over if Britain departs. Now, that's the key point. They've been meeting in Brussels to hand over sovereignty. And they were saying, we have the flag, we have the anthem, we don't have much of what supports that flag and that anthem. In other words, they want more political control. As one guy said, we thought, as he pointed to the founding fathers of the European Union, said the founding fathers thought they were like medieval alchemists. They thought they could transform the stone of economic integration into the gold of political integration. That was always the goal, political integration, okay? That has always been the end game with this, political integration. It's always been a political move. It's always been about self-government. And that is what's so dangerous about it. Let me just run down these 8 real reasons why they should have left and why they did leave. The first one, again, is that 350 million pounds per week. These are Boris Johnson's reasons, okay? 350 million pounds per week, more to spend as Brits wish, spending it on their priorities. And I pointed out when I did this comparison, I said, hey, in Texas, it's about $1.5 billion a week. Now, you can quibble over the numbers. The bottom line is, why should we be sending more money to Washington than we get back? Because what do we get back from them? Well, we get massive amounts of regulations, okay? We get a jurisdiction of a court that interferes in our lives. He put it this way. He said, in Britain, they'd be able to get out from underneath the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, increasingly arbitrating in questions that we never thought it would become involved in, even going down into the family, into the right of the child. What's happening with our Supreme Court? The same thing. They're expanding their powers. They are taking power that was never theirs. And this is why it is so important that we don't move to the next level. They have created these economic blocks in Europe and North America, these trading blocks, and in Asia. They're trying to consolidate those now with America as the spine. Okay, and the 2 wings would be the European Union and the Asian trade. And the way that they're going to connect those wings to the spine are with these trade agreements, the transatlantic and the trans-Pacific. If they do that, and that has been the plan and the way they viewed the world and the steps towards global consolidation, it's been the overt plan of the Trilateral Commission since Mika Brzezinski's dad wrote the plan and then became the first president of the Trilateral Commission. Let's create these economic blocks in these 3 areas, and then we will gradually make them more political. Then we will create another economic trade treaty to link the 3 of them together through the United States, and then we will assert political control over the entire world. Now, what's happening is that one of their blocks is starting to unravel, and it is a worldwide movement. Here they've got a maverick who came out of nowhere, Donald Trump, who has opposed for 30 years these globalist trade agreements like NAFTA, okay, which has had deleterious effects here in the U.S., just as the European Union has had bad economic effects there, has opened up our borders, just as the European Union has opened up our borders. And he said, that's enough. It's a bad deal, and we're not going to go the next step. Now, they're saying they're going to try to run this through before Obama leaves office. Well, we'll see about that. We'll see about that, whether they do that or not. I don't think that'll happen. But he goes on to say we'd be free to do our own free trade agreements. If we stay, they will drag us ever farther into a federal structure that will support this fiat currency that is absolutely worthless. The same thing is happening here. This is a movement of self-government. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other side of this and the face of this. This article that was on the Drudge Report today, there are now more bureaucrats with guns than there are U.S. Marines. It is a standing army. They're standing there with guns pointed at your head. They are writing the laws without your input, and they have their own courts and their own army. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to be joined in the next hour. Anthony Gucciardi is going to be hosting our fourth hour, and he's going to have Dr. Group as one of his guests. He's going to have a couple of different guests to talk about health issues. Along that line, we have a new special at InfoWarsLife.com, 20% off Deep Cleanse. You might want to use 5, 6, or even 7 cleansers to do what this one cleanser, this all-in-one cleanser, the Rolls-Royce of cleansers that we sell, can do. And of course, it combines the power of concentrated zeolites, organic cilantro, organic milk thistle, fulvic acid, many other cleansing ingredients. We thank you for your support, and we offer these kinds of sales because we want this to be a win-win for you as well. We try to create the best products that we can, and we do that. You can read the reviews, the hundreds of 5-star reviews, and this is one of our fastest selling formulas that we have at InfoWarsLife.com. On sale right now, 20% off at InfoWarsLife.com. Deep Cleanse, 20% off. Also, if you want to spread the news, start the revolution for our independence. It's going to be, we're going to have that vote coming up first Tuesday in November. We're going to vote on whether or not we want to be independent of the globalists, because this is a global war against us. You can get your Hillary for Prison t-shirt to spread the news, 50% off. And if you sign up for our free newsletter, you'll get a code for 75% off additional t-shirts. And also, we still have the 20% off Alexa Pure water filters at InfoWarsStore.com. If you don't have clean water, you're in trouble. You need to make sure water is the most essential thing. You can go for a while without food, but you can't go long at all without water, and you need to have clean water. Whether you're on a well or whether you're on a municipal water supply, we've got 20% off all the filters from the largest gravity-fed all the way down to shower filters. They're going to take out things like chlorine, so you don't get chlorine gas when you put that hot water in your shower. So all those Alexa Pure water filters are 20% off at InfoWarsStore.com. Now, so when we came back, I wanted to talk about this article that's on the Drudge Report from the Washington Free Beacon. There are now more bureaucrats with guns than there are U.S. Marines. Remember, the greatest danger to our country that our founders saw was that of a standing army. They wanted the community to have the power. That's what posse comitatus means, folks. Think of the Old West movies where you've got the sheriff, and he's got 1 or 2 deputies that are always there. These are the professionals, the people who are going to be the leaders. We had a professional military corps that was always going to be there that would lead the people if our country was invaded by enemies, foreign or domestic. But the real power was in the community. The militia was to be trained on how to use firearms. They would have their own firearms readily available, just like they do in Switzerland. The power was supposed to be in the community. They said standing armies have always become means of oppression at home. The means of our defense abroad have become the tools of tyranny at home, to paraphrase Madison. So they created the Second Amendment. That's what it's fundamentally about. It's not about hunting. It's not even fundamentally about self-defense on a personal level. Those are obvious legitimate uses, but it is fundamentally about making sure that the power resides in the community instead of a professional standing army. But we've gone one step further than that, something that is even worse than that. There are now more non-military government employees who carry guns than there are U.S. Marines. They point out in this Washington Free Beacon story, Open the Books, which is a taxpayer watchdog group, released a study Wednesday, that finds domestic government agencies continue to grow their stockpiles of military-style weapons as Democrats hold their sit-in, calling for more restrictions on the guns that you can buy, okay? They call this the militarization of America. $1.4 billion spent on guns and ammunition. We talked about that. We were the ones who Paul Joseph Watson broke the massive purchases of ammunition Everybody said, oh, you're fear-mongering. There's nothing wrong with that. We'll talk about that when we come back right after the top of the hour. And Anthony Gucciardi is going to be with us in the fourth hour. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. This final segment, I'll be with you. And then Anthony Gucciardi will be here with Dr. Group for the fourth hour. So I was talking in the last segment about this article about there's now more bureaucrats with guns than there are U.S. Marines. Okay? Now, this is something, if you remember the phrase taxation without representation, what does that mean to you? I mean, that was a key part of what was going on with Brexit yesterday. They understood that they were not well represented. They weren't being listened to. There wasn't any transparency. There wasn't any control of Brussels. They wanted government closer to them, more easily controlled. And certainly it's not perfect. I think the national governments have gotten far too large. They try to control far too large political segments. I think it's going to have to get much smaller if anything's going to get any better. But it's a start. And if we let our government be subsumed into a world government, we're not even going to have the basis to appeal to the Constitution. But what started the American Revolution? What was one of the major griefs that they had with Brexit? And that was taxation without representation. There's also regulation without representation. How does that look in our country? Well, it looks like these bureaucracies that we don't elect, that persist regardless of who becomes president, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. These permanent unelected bureaucracies continue to write our rules. They continue to tax us with those rules. They drag us into their courts, not the real courts. They call these civil actions so that we have no due process. You understand that, right? That's one of the key issues with the drug war. Civil asset forfeiture. They say, oh, no. We're going to just take your property, your car, your boat, your plane, your house. We're going to say that it was involved somehow tangentially in a drug deal. We're not going to charge you with anything. So it's not a criminal action, so you don't have any due process. But this is a civil action. So if you want to get your property back, you're going to have to come up with the money to sue us. You're going to have to sue us to get your property back. They do the same thing with eminent domain. We're seeing that happening now here in Texas. And so this is the way the bureaucracies operate. They level fines, massive fines, ridiculous, excessive fines against you. But they say, oh, no, it's just a civil action. It's not a criminal action. So all these constitutional protections don't apply. It's total nonsense. It's just a lie. And we need to call it for what it is. But they have essentially created their own laws, their own courts, where you have no presumption of innocence, where you have no due process, and they have their own army of law enforcement people. This report that came out of Open the Books says the militarization of America, that's the name of the report, the Militarization of America report found civilian agencies spent $1.5 billion on guns, ammunition, military-style equipment between 2006 and 2014. Examples include IRS agents with AR-15s, EPA bureaucrats wearing camouflage. You know, there was several years ago, the Washington Post did a story saying, wait a minute, we just saw an RFP, just like we pointed out these RFPs about requests for purchase, about all the massive ammunition purchases. And they said, wait a minute, this is a massive quantity of bullets that are being bought. This is not for target practice. This is equivalent to several years' worth of ammunition expenditures in the Iraq War. What's going on with these people? And furthermore, these are hollow point bullets, which are outlawed even for the military to use. But of course, governments can use them against their own people, designed to do the maximum amount of damage. And of course, the military makes its own bullets, but Homeland Security and these bureaucracies were buying them out of the marketplace and creating havoc inside the marketplace. Nobody could get ammunition for their own weapons, okay? They were sucking up all the supply. And so they point out regulatory enforcement within these administrative agencies now carries the might of military-style equipment and weapons. They say there's 200,000 non-military federal officers with arrest and firearm authority. There's only 182,000 Marines. That's the danger that we have in this unaccountable, non-transparent government that is coming at us. Taxation without regulation, without representation, regulation without representation.
That's right. It's the Alex Jones Show, and I'm Anthony Gucciardi. This is the fourth hour of Overdrive. David Knight did such a great job today listening to the show. He's so on point and really knows what he's talking about. Now it's time for me. And whether or not I know what I'm talking about We do have a lot to talk about today. We've got two guests. I wasn't going to bring Dr. Group on